Hello, I'm Betty Swann. Welcome to our show, Wisdom in the Night, where you get help for the tough decisions in your life. Tonight I have a great guest. He's a former NFL offensive tackle for the New York Jets. Welcome, D'Brickashaw Ferguson, commonly known as Brick. And you look like a brick. You look like you're a solid man.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit of your background, where you grew up, about your family, how you ended up playing football, whatever.
I grew up in Long Island, Freeport, New York. My mother wasn't a big advocate of football. In fact, I was never really supposed to play football. I had a heart problem. And,
Really? How was that?
I had to have open heart surgery. Some of my veins were not positioned well on my heart, and so they needed to be changed. And that was about, some of third grade, so about 9 years old. And so that was a very big time in my life, my family's life. And I don't think I understood the magnitude of that moment. But when I met with my cardiologist at the time, he had told me that I would never be able to play contact sports again. And being so young, I really didn't recognize the magnitude of what that meant. But certainly as I got older, it began to play a bigger role.
Oh, of course, because you probably wanted to, because everybody did.
Right. So it was about maybe a few years later where I used to do martial arts with the family, and I recognized that I would always have to wear a chest protector or some of these other protective elements where other people wouldn't have to do so, and I began to feel like handicapped, and I didn't like how that felt. So in my head, I began to kind of concoct this plan to show and prove my toughness, and football was going to be my vehicle to do that.
And how old were you when you started coming up with your plan?
Well, I got some pushback. My mom didn't necessarily agree with the plan.
Being a mother, I totally get that.
And so, we had kind of come to a head, and I wasn't relenting at all, and she was like, look, we're going to go to the cardiologist, and whatever he says is final. And I was like, you know what, so be it. So we went to the cardiologist, and he looked at my charts, and he looked at me. And at this point, the original cardiologist that I had, he'd gone on, and so we were assigned a new doctor. And he said, the other cardiologist, he was just being overprotective. There's no restrictions. You can play whatever you want.
So what'd your mom say?
She just kind of stared at him like, no, that's not what I was expecting. And
Right.
I was like, see, I told you.
Wow.
And I played football, so.
And you started playing what, like in middle school?
Yeah, about 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Were you big always in size?
I was always tall, and I was always, I was actually very lean.
Yeah.
My issue, even when I got into the NFL, was, adding weight,
Bulk.
getting bigger, getting bigger. So eventually I was able to kind of check that off the box, but initially that was something that I had to work on.
Yeah, how tall are you?
About 6'5", 6'6".
And so when, like in middle school and high school, how tall were you?
I mean, I was always towering over the other students. I was always a very tall child.
Mm-hmm, but just slender.
Very slender. Eventually, I started to fill out, but not compared to a lot of the other football players at my age or level. So again, it was something that when I was in high school in 9th grade, I was 215, and then maybe my junior year, I got to 250. But some of the more the prospects, or even when I spoke to some of the college coaches, they said they wanted me at 300.
Oh, wow, 50 pounds.
And that's not really an unrealistic number, even for high school kids to be weighing 300, especially in some parts of this country. But for me, that was a tall order, and I didn't think that would ever happen. But when I got into the NFL, I quickly understood why you want to be that size.
Because they're so big.
They're so big, they're so strong. You need that size to help do your job.
So how'd you get that on you?
Working out, eating. I used to do it. My mom now became my biggest advocate, so she would give me Ensures. My grandmother at the time, that's what she used to drink, to keep her weight on. So Ensures was, my mom was a nurse.
Oh, okay.
And she initially worked in the hospitals, but then transitioned into the education.
So did you grow up in a single parent home?
No, my mom and dad, we lived together. I have an older brother. We actually went to the same college. So it was a very stable environment, very encouraging. But I think sometimes, each person's path is a little different. I was the one that had to have surgery. I was the one that was able to go into football and kind of move up the ranks. So as much as it was a lot of support, my brother and my parents both supported me along my way. My parents, really up until I got married, were at every single game. So there was a lot of support along the way.
So were you a standout player in high school?
I think I began to get the attention of not only my coaches, but some of the local scouts pretty early on. But again, I was just, worried about, being the best I could be. So it never really came down, that feedback didn't necessarily come back to me. They just had that knowledge, and I was just focused on, how do I stop my opponent? How do I win this championship as a team?
So your wisdom to anybody watching is have the big dream, but stay focused on what you're really supposed to be concentrating on, right?
I think, yes. I think many people can dream to aspire to do great things, but you still have to do well at the level you're at. It's not about skipping steps, right? If you want to go to high school one day and you're in elementary school, you need to pass elementary school and you need to go to junior high school or middle school even before you get to those stages. And if you don't pass through those stages, you will never be prepared for high school or college. So it's kind of just like you've mentioned, you can have big dreams, but you can't skip steps.
Yeah, I've even heard this saying, for a Christian life, there's no shortcuts to spiritual maturity.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
You got to just get in and learn it and go and learn it and go and learn it and
Definitely.
go. Well, where'd you go to college?
University of Virginia.
And did you like it?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it was a good experience. Football. Again, my brother was there, so it was familiar.
So you and your brother are close?
Yeah, we have a good relationship.
That's good. That's really good. Well, so how did you get in the pros? Did they start, you just had an outstanding career there?
I did have a stellar career at the University of Virginia. I did begin to get noticed my junior and senior years. And so scouts are always looking for the next talent, and then being in a Division I program, we played against a lot of top teams. So it was actually Mel Kiper that kind of predicted that I would have success, and he's a sports personality on ESPN, and that kind of helped move the ball a little bit.
It's amazing how, no matter how good you are, if there's somebody in your life that's speaking for you and causing people to notice you, it goes a long way, doesn't it?
Most definitely.
Yeah, and we all have to have those kind of people that are just in our court, and you can't make them be there. They see something in you and they want to be there.
Yeah.
Like Mel, right? That's right. Well, now tell me about your Christian experience. And I know you have a really close walk with the Lord. I know about that. But how did that happen?
I think my parents really tried to raise me up in the church. We spent a lot of time going to Bible study, love feasts. And I think that built a certain foundation. But much of this walk, I think you learn on the journey. At every stage, whether it be adolescence, college, and even afterwards, that relationship gets deeper or it changes. And I think, you learn a lot by the things that you go through. But having the ability to always tap into a church or having a connection with somebody who is strong in their faith, I think is always going to be important, because whether you're a mature Christian, whether you're immature, whether you waver, it's not so much about the mistakes, but it's, can you find help, right? Do you know where to tap into when things are troublesome,
Do you still have somebody like that in your life now?
Very much so. I think there's multiple people that I tap into. I think there's no one, I think, issue that any one person can solve. So I think sometimes you need to go to different people based on the issues you're dealing with. If I have a issue in football, maybe a coach would be more apt than a friend. If I have an issue in the church, maybe a pastor would be more appropriate than a coach. So I think it all depends on who you feel comfortable with, but also where their expertise and how does that help you?
What do you do now? I know, especially when you were playing, what did you do to keep your relationship with Jesus active and current? What would you do?
I think you answered it even in your question. You got to stay active, and what does that mean? Well, my wife and I are big advocates of an organization called PAO, Pro Athletes Outreach, and they have a big conference every year. It's almost like a boot camp where you go and you learn about marriage, you learn about how to live a Christian life as an NFL athlete, and that's very encouraging because then you go there, but you bring it back to the team. You have relationships with other families and friends that attended that conference, and so you begin to do life together. We have a chaplain who is a part of our church, Adam Burt. So he has been able to, you go to the chaplain for Bible studies throughout the week, but then you also have that reinforcement on Sundays or whatever programs you have during the week with church. I think it's just about finding as many ways you can tap into it. Your personal study. Some people like to study in the morning, some people like to study at night, some people like to listen to music to get inspired.
What do you do?
I like to read at night. I also like to read when I wake up. I'll read like a chapter just to kind of orient my thinking. In fact, Pastor Burt was a big proponent of reading Proverbs and finding the day of the week and just going along with the chapters.
And for people that are watching, they may not know this, there's 31 chapters of Proverbs. There's 31 days of the month.
Yep.
Whatever the day of the month is, you read that proverb.
Oh, yeah.
So I read my proverb this morning for the day that this was in the month.
Yeah.
It works. And then, you get a lot of common sense there. You get a lot of wisdom and understanding there. Now, I have another question I want to ask you. A lot of people talk about you've got to have the fear of the Lord. I know it doesn't mean be afraid of the Lord, but what does having the fear of the Lord mean to you?
I think it's a reverence, it's a respect. I think growing up, there's always people you look up to and you respect that, hey, they went through a certain amount of training or they went through a certain amount of discipline to get to where they are. And because they did that, they've had success. And I think even in our spiritual training, we understand that, if God's the standard, Jesus died on the cross for us, there's a certain amount of reverence that we give Christ because of what he's been through. And we also know that, because he loves us, the things that he teaches us, if we follow them, that we can enjoy, a good life here and when we see him. So I think fear is respect, a healthy respect. It also keeps you from doing things that would cause your own folly. And it kind of helps orient your life a little bit.
What would you say is the greatest thing God's taught you?
Redemption. I think the one thing that a lot of times we feel is that, we have to try to live a perfect life and the standard's too high. But, when Christ died, he didn't die for just those sins over there or our present sins, but it's all of us. There's no sin that Christ's blood didn't cover. So it's important that we understand the power of him and what he means to us. And I think there is a relationship there that you have to tap into, you have to build. If it's going to be genuine, then it's something you need to work on. It's not something that somebody can wish for you, although people can intercede and pray, but it has to be something that you kind of work on, because then when it's authentic,
you have to want it. In other words, you have to want it and go after it, right?
I agree. When it's authentic, then it becomes real, and then that's when you don't have to worry about so much of how other people, what they need to tell you. You can tap into it when you need to.
Well, now everybody has a destiny or a purpose for being on earth. And the Bible says before you were born, actually it says even before the foundation of the earth, I knew you, I wanted you to be here, and I have a plan. What do you think is God's plan or destiny for you? Because you were, what, 10 years in the NFL? How many times were you all pro?
Went to the Pro Bowl 3 times, yeah.
Wow, wow. All right, and now you're moving on, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, but what do you think God's purpose for D'Brickashaw Ferguson being born was?
Well, I have a very good friend, and he was on the team. In fact, his name is Demario Davis. We played football together, but we also did, life together. And what he always told me was, God puts you in different arenas, different places, and whatever place you find yourself in, that's how you serve. It's not so much about getting into the NFL, or it's like wherever you are, whoever you interact with, that's where you serve. And some of the spiritual gifting that I feel that I have is just teaching. It's really teaching through my experiences. It's almost like telling my story. When I played football, I had the ability to, that was almost the vehicle that I had to connect with people. People would listen to me because I was on a certain platform. But also you make relationships. There's like people who play similar positions, or, if you're in the NFL, you understand how challenging it is to get to that point. And I think you build bonds by just being there. And I think sharing the gospel, being ambassadors for Christ, it can be done in a very authentic way. I heard a message of a missionary one time, and he said, you know what? When I go and I see people, I just try to be their friends. It's not like, oh, if you don't accept Christ, I'm not going to be your friend. That's not genuine love, right? I'm going to be your friend, and because of our friendship, if you see that, hey, there's something about you, and what is it, then I'll be glad to share, but I'm going to be authentic to you, and that's what it's all about. And so in a similar respect, I'm just going to try to be a very authentic person. I'm going to try to study the Bible. I'm trying to learn, and if somebody sees in me something, then I would want to be able to speak what I know or speak through my experiences. But I feel like that's an authentic way of trying to share and also spread the gospel. But definitely teaching, having something that you've either learned through your experiences and relaying it to other people.
And probably that, is it PAO?
PAO, yep.
There, you've probably shared with people there, haven't you, your experiences?
I have, and I've also learned through people sharing their experiences. Some people who have played in a league but are much removed, and some individuals who are still very active, but they have such a testimony that it just stays with you.
And it inspires you.
Very much so.
Well, what kind of challenges have you encountered that you thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to get through this?
I think at every level, at every stage, there's always something that you look at and you say, maybe I messed up, or maybe this is the one mistake that is gonna, cause me to go off the path. I mean, even in retirement, it's a big transition. It's a big identity shift. There's a lot of it's a new experience.
Yeah, do you miss it? Do you miss football?
I think the game is always something that you put so much time into it. It's hard not to miss that game. But there's also a healthy kind of detachment where you're like, this was a stage that I did, and now I'm in a different place. And it's okay to say, man, I remember when, but it's something that I'm good with where I'm at now. But separating yourself from being an NFL player can be challenging because you wrap so much of your time, the people you engage in.
Right, and all the years. Think about all the years. How many years in your life have you been involved in football?
About 20.
See?
Yeah, about 20.
I mean, so you have to have a new identity.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, your reputation will help you in your new career. I mean, it has to.
Yeah.
But you still got to do your new career, and you got to learn. What are you doing now? Where's God taking you next?
Well, I have an opportunity to work with a wealth investment company. I'll be interning there and learning really about financial literacy. As an NFL player, I've been blessed, and it's something that I've always wanted to be able to teach or engage other people and say, look, this is how you plan your life This is how you become a steward. That's something that PAO teaches. That's something that my certified financial planner teaches. Stewardship. God gave a talent to this one, 5 to this one, 10 to this one, and then he'll ask you, what did you do with that? And so I just wanted to be able to give a good answer. And anybody else who's been entrusted with wealth or funds or income, have a plan for their life, a plan that may be very separate from what the world has for them.
Well, Brick, did you see people in the NFL that did not handle their money wisely, and then you saw others that did?
Well, I never felt like just because you're a great athlete, that immediately meant that you're an excellent person in financial literacy.
Right.
The two are not.
No, they don't necessarily go together.
So, I always felt that just because a person comes on hardship or has some challenging times financially, that we shouldn't look at him as though, oh, he's not smart or he's not wise. When did he have the ability to learn about finances? When was he taught growing up about the importance of learning about financial literacy? And I think that unless you come from wealth or surround yourself in those type of environments, it's not a concept that you easily learn. So I just wanted to make sure that if anybody were to ask me, and I wanted to be actually proactive and be able to assist those who come into wealth or have questions about finances at many different levels, and try to be an advocate.
Do you think that once you get this training, besides working with regular people, do you think that you'll go back to people that are in the NFL and say, let me help you with what I've learned and what I experienced myself?
I think, the opportunity has to be there. I'm definitely, I don't want to close any doors to that. But I do feel that it's something that I would be grateful to do, because I know that it's not that people want to handle finances poorly, or it's not that it's even easy. It's just something that you have to learn how to do it. And I feel like even in this process of me learning, interning, and developing, that I'm even giving myself a better chance of having financial success moving forward.
Do you ever find that these people you're working with now are maybe so in awe of you because of your career that maybe they don't speak as plainly with you as they should? Or do you find that they say, no, we know things you don't know and we're very happy to tell you?
I don't think that everybody's impressed with the fact that I played football. I think, and those are sometimes the people that you need to surround yourself with, the people that don't necessarily, it doesn't mean, it's nice, but it doesn't mean the world to them. And I respect that, because now it gives us a chance to kind of sit down and really talk about what's ahead of us.
Right, and just put everything on the table and everybody's level.
Right, and I think that's also very helpful, because now when you talk about identity, now you begin to transition and you learn, okay, this is how I need to interact, this is how I need to work or do things outside of the identity of.
All right, well, let me ask you something. Since the show is about wisdom, and you made a career change, and I know you prayed a great deal, didn't you, and waited a great deal before you moved. How did you know God was leading you to move in this direction?
Well, it's funny because our prayers always are, if this is not the opportunity, make it plain, close the door, or open doors for us to go. And my wife and I, Kirsten, there was a lot of indecision. I didn't know which step to take. And even in my prayers, there would be opportunities, and the only way for me to know if this was what I needed to do was to do every opportunity as though this was going to be the job, or this was going to be. So I would try to go full force. I would learn as much as I could, and then something would happen where a wall would come up.
A door would close?
A door would close, or something wouldn't be as open as it initially seemed. I actually did that a couple times, and then I took a step back because I felt as though maybe I was looking too much for the job and not really focusing on the purpose. And the purpose, when you talk about teaching, when you talk about how to build the kingdom, those were things that I was like, maybe if I just try to learn, what are my gifts? How do I affect others? How have I affected others in a positive way? Maybe that'll help propel me. And so when I really dealt on that, then there were doors that opened again. And just in the same way, I would kind of seek and just continue to go. And then sometimes as you learn information, you say, you know what, this isn't the right time right now, or perhaps I can do these things, but which would I be best at? So
Right. So what I hear you saying then is it's kind of a twofold thing. First, you look at where's a place I could be of service, be of use to somebody based on my gifts and talents. And you did that first, right? You tried other ways, but then you ended up coming back to that. And then from there, with prayer, you began to see doors open and seem more plain to you. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I just think it's wonderful you have this teaching gift. It's I have that gift. I love to teach people how to do something. I love to see the look in their face when they get it. And it makes me feel like my life has meaning because I can share what I know. And that's what you're saying. Well, Brick, I want you to look in that camera and I want you to talk to the people that are very discouraged right now and give them some hope and encouragement. Just a few seconds.
You know, I feel like whenever you do or transition from one opportunity or one job to another career, there's always that identity that can get wrapped up into what you've done with who you're going to be. And I would just encourage you to just pray and really spend time on, you know, what talents do you feel that you have spiritually, not only in the world, but spiritually. What are your spiritual talents? Because oftentimes, God will help use you and place you in a place where you'll be best able to use those talents. And then I would say, you know, I'd pray for perseverance. I'd pray for the ability to just continue and not get discouraged, because that definitely comes into play. But God has a plan, and
Well, great.
trust God.
I just want to tell those of you that have just heard him talking about that, be encouraged. God does have a plan for your life, and like Brick said, it can be anything. So stay open. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It wasn't an accident that you turned on the TV. I hope you got some great wisdom and that you have a great rest of the night, whether you are going to sleep or going to work. I'll see you next time. Bye.